India has become one of Russia's most valuable economic partners as they run out of friends in their war against Ukraine. But is Ukraine trying to woo Prime Minister Modi away from the Russian sphere of influence? And just what would it take to get India to change course? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. Okay, so this is some classic statecraft diplomacy here. And I wanted to talk about sort of how Prime Minister Modi is doing a classic move of playing both sides against each other so that he comes out on top. So he tomorrow is going to be visiting Ukraine to meet with Zelenskyy. Of course, this is several weeks after Modi visited Moscow and had an extensive series of meetings with Vladimir Putin, where they announced a number of agreements between India and Russia. So there's a bunch of problems that Zelenskyy has to confront here in his upcoming visit with Modi. The first and foremost is that Modi has some extensive ties with Russia, and it needs those extensive ties with Russia. The reason is pretty simple, that India is growing. There's a lot of Indians. The population is growing immensely, and it needs an economy that can sustain them, right? Because if there's one surefire way for a politician in a developing or even just a rapidly growing country to not get elected, it's to have a growing population and a smaller economy for those young people to work in, right? So the Indian and when you have a rival like China, who's already economically can feel several steps ahead, India needs to pull out all the stops and get all the friends in its corner that it can have. And Russia has been an eager friend, right? During their meeting, Putin and Modi announced a large number of deals expanding economic ties, Russia going ahead with a bilateral payment system using each of their national currencies. Russia agreed to return Indian nationals who had been serving in the Russian army. There's also been a huge expansion of Indian efforts to buy Russian crude oil. In some instances, India just has a great hustle going on where they purchase sanctioned low-cost Russian oil and then refine it and sell it to the West, making sure that money gets put in Putin's pocket as well as in the pocket of Indian refiners. These margins, of course, are really, it's great for India, and it puts them, as they see it, their economy and their growing country on closer to economic parity with their big rival in the Pacific, China. Right? Share of Russian oil in the total volume of Indian imports was a record 44% last month. This is July, rising to 2 million barrels a day, 4.2% higher than June and 12% more than a year ago. This is absolutely crazy because China gets 1.6 million barrels a day via literal pipelines. They literally build pipes that just pump oil into China, and India is still importing more. That is how robust this economic agreement is. But it's not just oil, right? Russia is also a key arms producer for India. The reason, of course, because China can manufacture a lot of its own weapon systems. That's kind of a core thing that China's doing here. But in order to keep pace, India doesn't have the in-country, in-house weapons manufacturing capabilities. They rely on Russia to produce cost-effective modern weapons systems. And so for India, they have a lot of Russian equipment in their military. And it's a way for Russia to make money, and it's a way for India to keep its own armed forces at parity with Beijing's. But, of course, India also imports and exports, has a lot of trade with the West. And that means that they cannot side too closely with Russia Because if they were to do so, right, that would isolate them from the West. They'd be subject, like Chinese banks, subject to external sanctions. So he's got to slide kind of on both sides of the coin. But he knows he's also protected because the West can't afford to not have India. China is clearly and has obviously made themselves a rival to the West. They're explicitly anti-Western. So India sits there and they need to be a strategic counterbalance to China. And you see they need it. India and Malaysia expanding ties as defense cooperation between Kuala Lumpur moves closer to Beijing. So you can see that all of these kind of Indo-Pacific countries are starting to, in some ways, they're vying with each other for influence. And again, when you're someone like China who can offer access to a huge economy, access to tremendous manufacturing capabilities, world-class research institutions, that's appealing for if you're someone like Malaysia. And so that's actually the exact dynamic that's playing out with Modi and Zelenskyy. Because when Modi goes to visit Zelenskyy here in tomorrow, I think it's today for you guys, I'm recording this a day early, but Modi and Zelenskyy can't offer India anything like what Russia can. Why? Because one, Ukraine is primarily doing ag exports to the extent that it does. Its smaller economy just simply cannot offer what Russia does. Like the most simple version of it is that Ukraine has a crisp 20 in his wallet, and Uncle Vlad can offer Modi $100 bills. There's nothing you can offer you're not going to be able to, no matter how you fold that $20 bill, it's never going to be worth more than somebody who can offer them hundreds. And so that is where Zelensky's going to have to lean on the West. The West is going to have to offer India some carrots, sure, but also some sticks to say, listen, if you want to play games with Russia, we're going to have to crack down. Even though we love having you as a rival, as a strategic balance against China, we need you to not be bankrolling Russia's war machine. But that's a pretty tall order. I don't know what else to tell you. And India, again, their number one priority is always going to be Indian national security first and foremost. And if that means making friends with someone like Russia, that's what they're going to do. Anyway, guys, if you're interested in seeing some of the uncensored combat footage from the front lines, particularly from the Kursk region, those videos just dropped. We just had some GoPro footage of a Ukrainian paratrooper squad conducting an ambush. That is available for members on combatvetnews.com. $5 a month. You support the channel, you keep me independent, and you get access to twice weekly frontline combat videos. You also, of course, have the lieutenant tier where you get the Q&A videos that just dropped today, yesterday for you guys. And the colonel tier gets you the by name shout outs at the end of the videos. So a huge thank you to our colonel tier members like Martin Baum, Chris Rossi, Stuart Abel, Daniel Brown, Sergey Zanchenko, Chris Holmes, Chris Gorsuch. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. That makes a difference. And I will see you guys in the next one. Cheers.